Welcome to Stories and Songs, a series of interviews featuring musicians from the world of jazz and improvisation. I'm Andrea Keller, and it's my great pleasure today to be speaking with Nicki Parrott. Welcome, Nicki, and thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
My first question, what have been the pivotal events in your musical journey?
Ah, it's a big question. Uh, I feel like I've done many different things on the musical journey, looking back over 32 years of being professional. Of course, going to the Sydney Conservatorium was pivotal. Spending 2 years there and learning off great musicians like Mike Nock and Craig Scott, and Don Barrows was leading the conservatorium back then. So that was pivotal, definitely. Then getting a grant to go to New York and not expecting to stay, but staying. So that was mid 90s, that was 94. So that was pivotal. And staying was pivotal. There's sort of like these gig highlights. You don't expect that you'd ever play at Carnegie Hall, but I got the opportunity with the New York Pops with Michel Legrand one time, and then another time with David Krakauer, a couple of times with David Krakauer. So they're highlights. That's a thrill to play in the big hall at Carnegie Hall. Touring Japan with my own band is a thrill because there's an audience that really like what I do there, and it's nice to have a guaranteed audience. When you go to Japan, you can just turn up and you know that the promoter's done his job and that there's going to be people there. So we're supposed to go this year, but and play a pre-Olympics thing with an all-girl band from there that I was going to be leading. So that was going to be exciting, but wasn't to be. So I'm hoping that will be repeated next year, next May, I hope. Things like that. I mean, they're all building blocks, but it's funny. I feel like I'm not the only musician who's looking back, especially in COVID, while we're here and reflecting on certain gigs and certain times in our life that just kind of feel unbelievable now. But just being swept up in living in Brooklyn for 18 years and Les Paul, there's a pivotal moment. I played with Les Paul at the Iridium for 10 years on a Monday night. And met and played with some legends, I guess, but it was really the experience of playing with Les in the last 10 years of his life. He was 84 when I joined him, and he passed away at 94. But he played up until 2 months before he died. So that's what kept him alive, and that was pretty inspirational.
Wow, that is. And what obstacles have you had to overcome along the way in your musical journey, and how have you dealt with them?
Oh, that's a tough question. I really think about this question. I thought I'd wing it. Uh, there are going to be obstacles, for sure. Sometimes, I think a bass player, I can't remember who it was. Might have been Bob Cranshaw, who I got to know in New York a little bit. I think it was Bob Cranshaw. He said to me, there are many reasons why someone gets a gig, and music is one of them. And that was a tough lesson to learn. A lot of gigs, and for me personally too, it's right place, right time. Sometimes it's a friendship with other musicians that lands you a gig, or, also where luck and opportunity intersect, So there are going to be times where you just can't fathom why you're not on that gig, why weren't asked to become asked back for that festival, or there's many reasons. Some of them have nothing to do with music. So it's part of the business we're in. You kind of have to develop a bit of a tough skin and persevere. And keep going, and a positive attitude really helps with that. Obstacles, you may also have financial duress. I've certainly had my share of that, especially the early years in New York. And you know, my first husband had a couple of kids, and it was, we're both musicians trying to make ends meet and gigging all the time. You know, I even had a gig in fashion for 8 months. I knew nothing about fashion, but I was okay on the phone, and I guess they hired me. I don't know why they hired me, but anyway, I did gig in fashion. I was working in a restaurant in New York when I first went there. So after 8 months of day jobs, I quit, and I just kept going and going and going. I taught myself electric bass. Back then there was, I mean, in the 90s, there were a lot of like what we call club date work over here, which is weddings, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, everything. So a lot of private functions, which was great at the time because that allowed me the ability to get an O1 artist visa for 3 years. So I never let myself be out of visa status here. I went from that to a green card, etc. And now I'm a full-fledged citizen for the first time this year. Mixed feelings about that, but I am going to vote this year, which is a good thing.
Yes.
So, you know, so it's been an interesting journey. I've been here 26 years. I would like to return to Australia. I miss Australia very much, miss my family. And there's nothing quite like it. It's like you can go around the world, which I have many times, and I still feel very much an Aussie at heart, you know. I know that's off topic, but I don't know, maybe it's a full circle moment for me, but I really miss and want to live in Australia.
I think that's important for people to hear, that you can travel all over the world, but you know there's still always a place that you'll want to return.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Yes, as I said before, it's in the time of Corona, it's been a huge time of reflection for me and what's important. And in the absence of gigs here, it's like I'd much rather be there, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's very interesting.
I hope you get back here before too long.
Oh yeah, I am planning on it, big time. Yeah.
And do you have a motto or a personal philosophy that guides you, or would you like to share some advice? We've already given some great advice, but have you got some more advice you'd like to share?
Yes, I know people say all the time, just think positive, have a positive attitude. It's important, but I think it takes practice sometimes for me. Um, Especially now, because we don't know what the winter here is going to bring. I keep just saying no to gigs I had in Europe and stuff here, but I had a lot of stuff in Europe this year, and I just have to keep saying no, even though the gigs are happening over there for them, distant or whatever, however they're doing them. I just have to keep telling them to sub it out. You know, it's not, you know, they're not letting Americans travel over there, but it's still too early to be doing that. So yes, keeping positive, and that hasn't been easy for me the last 6 months, but it's very important. Perseverance is very important, and yes, and also practicing gratitude. And I say practicing gratitude because I think that's what gratitude is. I think you have to practice it. You know what I mean? You don't wake up every day excited to practice or excited to keep going and if you think too far in the future, you can get quite worried or quite concerned about economic things, or there's a lot of things that can come crashing down. So it's I practice gratitude every day. I'm very lucky and happy in a way to be in a nice house in Connecticut, away from New York City right now. And that's where I've been quarantining, and I'm really very, very grateful. Connecticut, there's nothing to do in Connecticut, but that's fine for now, And yes, good advice. It's just I can't think of a lot right now. I think you also have to work on not only finding your own voice, but accepting your own voice. Now, I've been singing now playing the bass for a long time, 30-something years, 35 years, but I've only been singing for the last, however long, 15 years, something like that, or 16. And I actually sang to keep my gig with Les Paul. He said to me one night, "Is that all you're going to do? Just play the bass?" And I said, "Well, that's all I was hired to do." And he said, "Do you tap dance? Do you do anything else?" I said, "Well, I sing at home, but everyone sings at home, right?" And he said, "Let's hear it." And I sang, I think, "The Man I Love" that night, because I could remember the lyrics to that song, and I sang it. And as I was leaving the stage, he said, "Leave that in." So to keep my gig with Les Paul, I had to sing every Monday night. So then the challenge was on. What's my range? How do I sing? I wasn't even breathing properly. I wasn't, and I really hadn't explored that option of singing and playing. Now it's basically all I do, But at the time, it was daunting. And for a long time, I didn't love the sound of my voice. I really didn't. It wasn't Ella Fitzgerald. It wasn't this. It wasn't that. It wasn't even Peggy Lee, even though we have a similar vocal range, I find. But it was none of those things. But after a while, I'd go to gigs and people say, I drove 200 kilometers to see you play tonight. Or I was in the hospital, blah, 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 and I had your records and your voice made me feel better, blah, blah, blah. That's worth more than any payment of a gig or any of that stuff. You know what I mean? When people say something very meaningful and make comments on your singing or playing, that moves them. Say, well, I can't discount that. That's very meaningful. And I started to accept how I play and how I sound on both the bass and voice. And now I'm much more accepting of it than years ago. And I think I waited a long time before I could actually say, that's not bad. It's pretty good. So without becoming egoistic, I'm not saying becoming egotistical, but I'm just saying have the confidence to say, this is how I play, this is how I sound, work on your voice and fake it till you make it. Fake the confidence until you feel confident. The more you do it and the more you put yourself out there, the more confident you do get.
That's a wonderful thing to share. Thank you.
I hope that's enough. I think it sums it up in a nutshell for me, waxes and wanes, but you just keep pushing forward.
Yeah, I think it's great. Perseverance and that acceptance of your own voice. I think that's a really big one.
Yeah, it is huge. Yeah, because we're always talking about the greats of this music, and the funny thing is when you hang out, which I did a couple of times, fortunate to get some of the greats like Clark Terry and Joe and Bob, like I said, Bob Cranshaw, and when you hang out with them, not only are they so down to earth, but they want to hear you. They don't want to hear you mimic so-and-so. And so, yeah, when you hear it from those guys, you go, oh, okay, all right, well, I'll develop me.
Fantastic. And could you please nominate a song or an album that's somehow significant or important to you? Because we'd love to listen to your music. And if you could just give us a little insight into it, that would be wonderful.
Okay, well, there's an album that I don't sing on, but there's plenty of that on YouTube. If students are interested in hearing me sing, one of the ones that I don't know how, but it got over 4 million views. I had nothing to do with that. I don't know how that happened, but it's called "I Will Wait for You." A lot of people comment on it. A lot of people like it. So I would nominate that song if you're a vocalist or interested in vocals. But I was driving along yesterday and I listen to serious jazz radio every once in a while. And something came on and without looking at the screen to figure out what it was, I'm like, oh, punchy. I like the bass lines. That's good. Wow, that drum is great. Wow. What? And then I looked down, oh, I'm on this record. And I really like the track. So that made me go back and listen to it. I'd never listened to this recording that I did last year with a vibraphone player called Chuck Red. And I think I love it because I love this rhythm section. It's the first time I've recorded with, not played with, had the fortune of playing with Lewis Nash several times. If you're a drummer, you really should check out Lewis Nash and the way he plays on this record. It's incredible. And one of my good friends who I've toured Japan with many times and recorded all the Venus Japan label records with, a great piano player called John DiMartino. very creative, wonderful, at home in any style. Brazilian, Latin. He played with Ray Barretto for years. He's at home with anything, and he's just wonderful. So the album is called, also Jerry Weldon, who played with Harry Connick, and he's playing saxophone. It's fun. It's a great album. The song I heard on the radio is Blues in the Shed, which is pretty straight ahead, but I thought it sounded good. I really liked Lonely Woman, the groove on that. It's an Ornette Coleman song. I thought I liked the way the piano player plays on that. And I was just listening to it 5 minutes ago, just before this interview. I was thinking, oh, that's a nice track. I like Regulator. Regulator, I think, is a tune by Monty Alexander, and Chuck Red has played a lot with Monty Alexander. I'm a huge Monty Alexander fan. So piano players, if you haven't, rhythm section players, if you haven't heard Monty's trio, anytime he's playing on any of the festivals I've been, I definitely go and check his set. You know, my husband and I, we're mad fans of Monty Alexander. So, and he's also really great at mixing jazz with reggae. And this song is called Regulator. So it's kind of got a hint of reggae, but it's really kind of a jazz song. And that's on this album, Regulator. I thought that was great. That's a great play.
And the name of the album, Nicki?
The album is called Groove City, Chuck Red, 2019.
Great.
Yeah.
Really look forward to checking it out.
Yeah, I enjoyed listening to it, and that's hard because I never like listening to albums I do necessarily. But as I said before, I'm getting used to appreciating some of the stuff that is really nice, actually. So
Thank you so much for your time today, Nicki, and for sharing your experience with us and all your great wisdom.
I'm open for questions. Just nickiparrott@hotmail.com. I'd like to answer any questions you might have, and anything at all, or recordings, any advice, any of that. Send me an email at nickiparrott@hotmail.com.
That's really wonderful. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. All the best.
Thank you very much. See you.